Premier League wins on the spin, a hat-trick for Harry Kane in arguably our performance of the season so far. And with Man City away up next, what is there to fear? This is your e-Spurs podcast.
Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Come on, you Spurs! Tottenham!
Hi guys, welcome back for another hour of talking all things Tottenham Hotspur. Please don't forget to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Acast and get every new episode direct as it's released. You can of course follow us across all social media platforms. We're on Twitter and Instagram at e_Spurs. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/eSpurs page. We're also on YouTube, Pinterest, Tumblr the lot. And for all the links to all eSpurs platforms, just head to our website, which is www.espurs.blogspot.co.uk. On the eSpurs podcast tonight, we'll be talking about the 4-0 thrashing over West Brom. We'll be taking your questions for the panel as always, and we'll be previewing a massive game at the Etihad next week. So, before we talk all things Tottenham Hotspur tonight, let's introduce the panel that will be talking us through the next hour. It's Jason.
Evening, mate. Good to be back.
Evening, Jace. Good to be back as well. And Ian.
Evening, chaps. Looking forward to tonight.
Yep, same here, Ian. Same here. Well, what a weekend for Spurs. Not only a 4-0 thrashing of West Brom, but the likes of Liverpool, the likes of City, and the likes of United dropping points as well. It was fair to say a fantastic weekend. We're going to come to you first, Ian, tonight. I've got to say, firstly, from my perspective, on a week where it's been dominated by players throwing their toys out the pram, such as the likes of Costa, such as the likes of Payet, what a fantastic team performance that was against West Brom at the Lane Saturday.
Well, if this is what you call, flying under the radar, then I'll take it all the time because, everybody else is making the headlines for all the wrong reasons, and we're still not given a sniff, which I'm quite pleased about, to be honest, because, whilst everybody else is talking the talk, we're walking the walk. So I just thought that Saturday's performance was, for me, the best performance I've seen over 90 minutes for many a year, because, you could argue that we were the better team for 44 minutes at Chelsea, but then we sort of fell away in the second half somewhat. West Brom, a team who historically over the last 5 years have been our bogey tide at White Hart Lane, we absolutely blew them away. So, let's hope we can take that forward into Saturday's game.
Yeah, I mean, Ian, from my perspective watching it, that first half from Spurs, it was such a fast start, and it's something in the past we haven't been renowned for. But West Brom, they just simply couldn't live with us. We were relentless. We were, completely savaging their goal. It was a fantastic first half performance. Do you think it's a case where Pochettino maybe said to the players, look, after last year, the disappointment of losing the title, where we know we all lost it pretty much at home to West Brom, and also the fact that after that win over Chelsea, it was a case of going and reinstating the case that we need to go and get these wins against maybe the smaller sides as well as the bigger sides. There was definitely a case where the team just seemed to come together as one and learn as a whole from last year and from that win over City during the start of the season.
Yeah, I think we discussed it on last week's pod, and I think that the team were definitely up for the game. I think they had a point to prove, and I think it was telling that Foster, afterwards, the West Brom keeper turned around and said it was the best he'd faced all season. So he's not a bad keeper, and he always takes the banter from the crowd with really good sort of dead. And I just think we were absolutely dominant. There were times there where, we seemed to hunt in packs in the midfield. I think it was telling that at one stage, you looked at the stats on Match of the Day after, and as Jason has so, succinctly put it, shouldn't read too much in the systems and all of that. But at some stage, we were playing like 3-2-5, with our wing backs who were playing, up alongside our front three. And I don't think West Brom could live with us, especially the first half. Second half, I think Pulis had sent them out with a bit more drive and thought as to how he could combat it, because they sort of tried to match us in that first period of the second half. But then once we got the third goal, it was just a training match, and there was that wonderful stretch at about the 83rd minute, where I think we kept the ball for about 5 minutes. Poor old Son was trying to come on, and I bet he's thinking, well, somebody kick this bloody ball out, so I'm getting cold stood on this touchline. So it was an imperious performance.
It was, and it's great you put up the point there about Son, Ian, because it was fantastic game management from Spurs. And bringing you in, Jace, I mean, I've got to bring you on to Harry Kane. We didn't pick up on it last week, but entering fatherhood now. 62 Premier League goals in 99 games, 13 goals this season, 5 goals in his last 4 games. I mean, and many people are critical of Kane in terms of maybe what he does during the game, but there's no argument that this guy is a predator in front of goal.
Well, it's astonishing, isn't it? Because I think he'd only scored, one Premier League goal when he got injured, and he didn't come back until the North London derby on November the 8th. And yet there he is, 1 goal off the top of the goal-scoring charts. It's remarkable. I thought that the key to his performance that we saw Saturday was that he stopped the moving out to the wings, hadn't he? That's the thing I think that frustrated us in a little bit in early December, when he was constantly pulling off to the wing, and whilst that leave the space for Ali, it was taking Kane outside the box. But Saturday he stayed very much within the penalty area line, if you like, and his performance and finishing was excellent. And but for Ben Foster, I mean, the good thing was, other than the first chance, the very first one he had that he glanced past the post, everything else he pretty much hit on target, didn't he? And brought a good save from Foster. So no, it was back to the old Harry, and it was an exceptional performance. It really was.
Yeah, I mean, anyone in that game particularly stand out for you, Jason? I mean, look at someone like Christian Eriksen. He's been involved in 10 goals now in his last 9 Premier League appearances, 5 goals, 5 assists. I mean, how much is he making this Spurs midfield tick? I thought he was superb at the weekend.
Well, I thought he was, and I think the big thing for me was the very first goal. It was him that charged down the free kick. It was him that then broke downfield. It was him that forced the bloke to put the ball into touch, and it was him then that provides the assist from the throw-on that Kane scores from. So, I think there's been criticisms even in his recent run of, other than the final pass, what else is he producing? And, well, he produced absolutely everything in that minute of football that you'd have wanted from a midfield player. So, no, his performance was excellent. But let's be fair, I mean, I think the only person that walked off the pitch having not had a good game was Hugo Lloris, and that's purely because he had nothing to do. I mean, I thought Eric Dyer absolutely strolled through the game. Jan was bursting forward. I think they suddenly realised that if West Brom are going to play with a 6-3-1, and let's be fair, that every time you saw a freeze picture, it was a 6-3-1 that West Brom had brought with them, and you think, God, this is a real bus parking job, and yet they were just ripped open time and time again. And the key was that movement of the ball and the pace that we were passing it with, wasn't it? It was really crisp, one-touch passing at times. And no, I mean, it's very hard to play like that every single week, but when we played like that, we look as good as anyone else out there.
Well, you made a great point there. I mean, that fast start, we've just said it before on this podcast, it hasn't always been there, Jason. You can see, really, when we do start as quick as that, if we can get those first couple of goals, there's not many teams that are going to come back to us, as we've seen in terms of our defensive record. It is the best in the Premier League. The same now as the goal difference. And, I mean, we are going to have to bring it up. Jan Vertonghen, it was the only kind of disappointing point to the game. He's gone off injured, suspected at this point to be quite a severe ankle injury. It's the same ankle he injured at Euro 2016. On the basis of the way he went off, is that a major concern?
It is a big concern, but it's almost a year to the day, isn't it, that he went off at Crystal Palace with an injury. I think that kept him out for, 2.5 months. And Kevin Wimmer came in and did such a good job that by the end of the time when Jan was ready to come back, there was a big debate whether Jan should come straight back into the team or Kevin Wimmer should hold his place. And I'll say one thing, I've been delighted with Jan's performances this season. I think when we were looking at our players this season, I remember, you certainly went for Danny Rose and he's been exceptional, but I think I went at the time and said, for all the changes and that have been around Jan when we were actually discussing it, I thought Jan had an excellent season as well. But I suppose it'll be cruel what I'm going to say now about Jan, but if somebody had to fall over and do that to their ankle on Saturday, you'd probably pick Jan, because our 2 wing-backs are now so important. You don't want it to be them. You certainly wouldn't want it to be Ali or Kane. You don't want it to be Wanyama that's completely got his place down. You don't want it to be Dembele because he's just the Rolls Royce in the midfield. You don't want it to be Toby because we know what he is. You don't want it to be Hugo. So you're left with Eric Dyer or Jan, and thinking, when you look at Jan, you think, well, Ben Davies can come in and Kevin Wimmer can come in. So I suppose if it had to happen to anyone, not that you wanted it to happen, but if it was anyone, it's probably better that it was Jan than anyone else.
Yeah, and it's most certainly going to give someone like a Ben Davies or a Kevin Wimmer an opportunity. And these guys, we have to say, Kevin Wimmer, Ben Davies, these are guys that we could arguably say could go to another club outside the top six and play regular football. So we're very lucky the way Pochettino is able to manage these players, that these guys will be coming in, raring at the bit to want to put a performance in, to show that, I'm worthy of a place in this Spurs side. And let's hope for what we're going to see. Coming to you, Ian, I have to say, the midfield, as great as Dyer was, Wanyama and Dembele for me, there just seemed to be that way, they just complement each other. They were superb, and it was very much a case of thou shalt not pass. No one seemed to pass them. What did you make of that combination in midfield?
Well, you've hit the nail on the edge, and I think that going back to my geeky stage, it was very Gandalfian, wasn't it? None of the West Brom players got a sniff, and as I said, I think I said earlier on, we hunted in packs when we didn't have the ball, and then when we did have the ball, you had Dembele, getting the ball and driving forward, which we've all, called out for, but Wanyama, the way he screens our back three it's really understated in some circles, but anybody that knows the football and has seen us in the last sort of 10 years, he is a steal. 11 million quid. I think there'd be a lot of the other top six teams would give their right arm for him, because he's such a beast in that midfield.
Yeah, and this move to Dembele, Victor Wanyama stat, 158 passes completed, more than the entire West Brom side throughout the game on Saturday. If that doesn't tell you all about their performance, I'm not sure what does. And I've got to come to you next, Jace. Looking at this stage compared to last season, which we always seem to do, we're 9 points better off than last season. We've still got the best defence, we've still got the best goal difference, and we're going to argue that we haven't really had, at times, our best possible team available to us. The likes of Lloris, Vertonghen, Alderweireld, Rose, Dembele, Ali, Kane, Lamela, these guys have all been out throughout little periods. How well has Pochettino done in order to kind of get a full strength team together on a weekly basis and keep churning out the results? Because very much at the top, apart from this weekend, which we've seen a few drop results, there haven't been many so far.
No, and I think that we've received a little bit of media comment that Spurs are certainly now perhaps in the fringes of the race, but what would happen if Kane misses out, or what will happen with Ali misses out? And I scream at them, when the pundits, I sit on the sofa and scream. I say, come on, we've already been with that 8 or 9 players this season. How many more do you want us to be injured? And it is a full credit to the players that have come in and done their jobs. And Ben Davies, when he's had to come in, has done the job. Kevin Wimmer's done the job that he needed to do. We've seen Sissoko of recent come in and contribute. Son's contributed goals when we've needed it. It has been a real team effort, and I think sometimes whilst we talk about our squad depth and we want better players, certainly perhaps as a backup to Kane, I think we do have a much deeper and better squad than people sometimes give us credit for. Certainly if we were to be missing 4 or 5 from a game, it will definitely show, but I do think we're at that stage where if we are missing 1 or 2 players, that there are people that come in and they're so well used to the system and the style of play and things that they just fit in quite easily, and it's not as noticeable. We've conceded just 14 goals, and Toby missed 7 games, and yet everyone would say he is the best central defender in the league, and so when people have maybe criticised Eric Dyer for not being as good as he was last year, well, those players must have been as good as they were last year at times, mustn't they? For us to be sitting second with 9 injuries that we've had this year, I think says a lot for us.
It does. I've got to say, lads, I can't remember the team spirit, even last year now as we talk, being as good as what it's been in recent years at Spurs under Pochettino. It does seem very much a family unit. Everybody is playing for each other. I don't like to bring other clubs into the podcast, but when you look at the likes of Chelsea and the Costa situation and West Ham and the Payet situation, we've heard a couple of stories this week where Kane is adamant that the players' heads won't be turned. Dembele has come out and said that, you know, a move to China in the future could seem, you know, something that might be of an interest to an older player. Is there a concern in our squad that if one of these Chinese clubs came for any of our players, do you think any of them would be tempted? Ian, what do you reckon?
If you went to work, Rick, and you were on, I don't know, say X amount of £1,000 a year, and then somebody offered to triple your wages, would you go?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair comment. I think you would in that. It depends on the type of profession you're in, but as a footballer, if you're a footballer and you aspire to win trophies, you aspire to do it in the big leagues, would there still be an interest if it meant tripling your wages? You know, when you look at someone like, I'll give you an example, like a Costa, he's on what, 125,000, 150,000 a week. He may be offered a move to China. Do you see an incentive there to want to go to China just for the money perspective? Because when I look at the Spurs squad, the likes of Dele Alli, the likes of Harry Kane, there seems to be that kind of commitment there that not only, you know, are they looking to win trophies, they want to do it in a certain way and in a certain method, which seems to buy into Pochettino's philosophy.
I think you're right. Well, I would also add that thinking of the players you've just mentioned, the Kanes, the Allis, the Dyers, you know, the Walkers, the Rose, there is still a yearning within them to keep in the national setup. Now, I often think if you head off to China, you might as well wave goodbye to your international career, because let's be honest, how many times is Gareth Southgate going to jump on a plane to go and watch you play in the Far East? I don't get it.
I think also on that, I mean, in fairness, we don't want to talk about Diego Costa on a Spurs podcast too much, but I think in fairness to him, you know, our players have achieved nothing in the game, the vast majority of them. Absolutely nothing in the game. Diego Costa's won La Liga, he's won the Premier League. We've seen him switch his international allegiance from Brazil to Spain, so, you know, if you could switch your country allegiance, what's the problem with switching leagues? And so, you know, he's at a different level of the game. Whilst he's still perhaps at the peak of his powers, there's more reason for him to say, well, you know, I've achieved everything that I probably set out to want to do within the game. He's played in a World Cup. He's been in a Champions League final, and he's won the league, as I say, in 2 different countries. So I think, you know, whilst he's not at the end of his career, he's achieved probably a lot of the things that he set out to do, whereas Eric Dyers and Harry Kane's and that, they've achieved nothing. They've played in a League Cup final. That's it. There's a big difference in that.
There's no one in that squad, Jace, that worries you that may... Because, like I say, the Spurs' harmony at the moment... I mean, I'm only alluding to it because there is such a fantastic bond in that Spurs squad, and you don't want anything coming along to ruin it. Can you see, in your opinion, anyone getting tempted away, or do you think, no, everyone is firmly, very much built into Pochettino's philosophy? That's the reason that everyone has signed new long-term deals. It's very much a case of they foresee their future being with Spurs.
I would say it's impossible to answer that question, mate. Moussa Dembele is, 29? Getting on 30. Are you telling me if he'd have an offer next week at £600,000 a week on a 4-year contract or something, he'd say no? And if Daniel Levy got an offer of 50-60 million quid for him through the fax machine or whatever, would Daniel Levy turn that down? I think every case is different, and you know, it was interesting Dembele said that, because I'm not saying he wants to leave at all, but I think every case will be on an individual basis, and Mousa's struggling to get through 90. We never see Mousa finish 90 weeks. We see him perhaps play 2 weeks in 3. He's had 1 or 2 injury problems, and maybe he's the type of player that would think, do you know what, there's a massive chance to complete my financial security for the rest of my life there. So I wouldn't say there's no chance of it happening at all.
Yep, I have to wait and see, but at the moment the harmony in the squad is fantastic, and it really just brings me on to the point that I've got to say, out of that 11 lads, hand on heart, when you see that team on Saturday, I don't think, we've said this many times on the pod, there's no one in that 11 you would turn around and say, I'd swap him for someone else in the Premier League. I just think that 11 on paper, it just seems to work, and Pochettino has now stumbled across what people may argue is his best team, and you're looking at someone like Eric Lamela, still a workhorse. Is he even going to get back into this team when he's fit?
Well, it'll certainly be hard for him to get in at the moment because you wouldn't want to change a winning side, and not just winning. I mean, we've scored 4 in 3 of those games, and we've looked incredibly comfortable. And I saw a brilliant statistic that said in the last 4 games, if Hugo Lloris had let every shot in, we'd have still got 10 out of 12 points. That says everything about us, doesn't it? And perhaps that's Eric Lamella's place. We'll do without Hugo, and we'll just pick an extra player up in the other half at the moment. But no, seriously, I can't see where Lamella will get back in the side at the moment. But of course, let's be fair, we won't play like this every week until the end of the season, and different teams will give you different problems that you have to come up against. And once Europe starts up again and we get to the business-ending cups, who knows whether we'll be into the latter stages of the FA Cup and into the latter stages of Europa. So there'll be plenty of time for Lamella, Son, Sissoko and all that to come in. But certainly you think for the Premier League games in the, over the course of the next 3 or 4 Premier League games, you don't see too many changes being made.
You don't. Coming on to you, Ian, next. I mean, I would say maybe a little bit different to last season, that we are now getting these results against the smaller sides while also beating the likes of the Man City and the Chelsea. Is there for you a difference in this Spurs side to last, or is it still very too much early to tell? I
think that, they are another year older, and I think that they would have, gone away, after that Newcastle game, and as was alluded in that excellent YouTube clip about Pochettino that Jason put me onto, I think that they'd have all have gone away after that Newcastle game and analysed not only that performance but the closing stages of the season. And I think that they, as a club, when they all got back together, I think they'd have gone in and done a sort of an analysis of what went well, what didn't go so well, and I think that what we're seeing this season is a much more mature set of young lads, and dare I say it, going back to something that Jason has said, quite a bit on the pod, I think they are learning some gamecraft, and they're starting to learn that how to win games and how to close games out.
And Jace, to you, same question. Do you think there's maybe a case where we've learned a bit from last season, or is it still very much too early to tell? Is this weekend coming up, Man City away, the test?
I think it's a test of sorts, but I think we'll probably go into that game almost as favourites. I think the bigger test will be when we go to Liverpool. That will be the bigger one for me, and then we'll really see, because I think we'll have to use far more gamecraft there than perhaps we will at City. And then I think there will be questions about us. We'll know then if our wing-back system works, because Liverpool will press us in areas that we haven't been pressed on. So, I'm not ready to say we've learned every lesson yet, but the last 2 games we've shown that maturity and intelligence that we've had to do, and we've shown that we learned from the lessons of Chelsea even this year, even forgetting May. We learned from the mistakes that we made at Stamford Bridge in November, and we've shown against West Brom that we've learned again from those mistakes that we made both in last May and then earlier in October at the Hawthorn. So yes, there's good signs, but until we get across the line somewhere and we do pick up a trophy, then those doubts will always be, will always be susceptible to having those criticisms of us, and we'll always ask those questions ourselves.
It's about Spurs trying to get over the line now in for a trophy, the likes of the Europa League that we're in, the likes of the FA Cup. I do very much think, and we said it on this podcast before, that is going to take us on to the next level of being recognised, and I think that's where you're going to start, if you don't want to having the pundits on Sky talk about us as potential title favourites or title rivals. I mean, at the moment, rightly, the likes of the Liverpools, the likes of the Chelseas, the Cities, they are the ones being spoken about purely because they've won trophies in the past and they've got winners in the squad. Unfortunately, we don't have that yet, but very much it does seem to be a place where Pochettino at the moment at Spurs is building that for. So fingers crossed we'll see that hopefully very, very soon in the future.
I think as well, Rick, I mean, the lessons we've had to learn were right at the end of the season. They were from game 33 to, or was it game 35 to 38? And this year, game 35 to 38 is Arsenal home, West Ham away, Man United home, Hull away. And it will be at that stage that we have to answer those questions. And can we show the gamecraft and intelligence in what will then be really high-pressure games?
No, exactly, and we've got a lot far a test ahead of us to come. I mean, West Brom game was a fantastic result, but there's no doubt that we've got a lot more stern tests to come, no less than Man City this weekend, which I'm sure we're going to come on to towards the end of the show. Guys, we're going to go for a quick break, and afterwards we're going to take the questions for the panel. Hi guys, welcome back to the e-Spurs podcast. As always, every week we ask you to get in touch with us with any questions you may have for the panel. If you haven't done that yet, and you may want to do so on a weekly basis, all you need to simply do is tweet the e-Spurs Twitter account, which is @e_Spurs. Leave your question and simply end the question in @eSpursPod, and you can also ask your question to the panel. Tonight, as mentioned, you've got into us in your droves. We're going to come to you first tonight, Jace. We've got Nick @iHawkNick, who asks, would Levy now say we don't need anyone in this transfer window with regards to the string of results we've been on?
Well, I think, I mean, we've kind of gone through this in recent weeks, haven't we? It's a question of who's available, and it is really hard to improve on the squad that we've got, particularly with the type of players you're going to get in January. There'll either be players at bigger clubs that haven't been playing any games, hence want to move, or they're players that, but quite frankly, are probably not good enough for us. It's difficult. I'm sure Pochettino, if he has the option to bring in one player that will make that much of a difference, he would like to do it. But where the hell you get one in January, I just don't see it happening, no.
Fair point. I mean, I agree with you. I don't think Spurs are going to look to strengthen. I think the string of recent results will put at the moment that to bed. I mean, ideally, I still think Spurs may be short of a kind of a player like a Zaha, like maybe a Barkley, where the game is petering out. Can someone come on and change it? But I don't think either of those players are going to be viable this window for Spurs, which I think would then see them maybe revisit those in the summer. But that's a case of wait and see.
Quickly on that one, I suppose the one thing he might want is we have got to look at, as we said also last week with the striker option, it was noticeable that Jensen didn't even make the bench on Saturday. And so was that a sign that they really now starting to worry themselves about how we get through this problem of a backup to Kane? But as I say, who the hell you can sign or where you get one from, one that's sufficient enough quality to make that difference, I don't know.
Always a tough window, January. We're going to come to you next, Ian. We've got a question here from, I hope I pronounced this right, Kawabna @KWAB_NA, who says, now we are banging the race, does our approach to cups change? Do we need a trophy to keep this team together?
To answer the first part of the question, does our approach to cups change? I don't think so, because I think we saw in the Villa FA Cup game, was it 9 changes? I could see us making the similar changes for the Wickham game in was it Saturday week. Little Marcus Edwards might be coming back to fitness, so we might see him on the pitch for the Wickham game. But to answer that part of the question, I don't see it changing at all. I think the interesting selection we'll see is for the Ghent games. Depends on what he feels there. And going on to the next part, and I think we sort of discussed this in the first part of the pod. I think we all agree that, I think that we do need to start winning trophies.
I think we've obviously discussed a lot on the pod at length that this squad, if it's one thing it's lacking, it is that next step of being winners. And, you can only get to that point by winning trophies. So that's something that hopefully Pochettino will adhere to and take the cups as seriously as he can. We're going to come back to you, Jace. We've got 2 similar questions here. Dominic Sibley @DomSim and Martin Dolan @MartinDolan101. And they both ask, if there's anyone you could bring in roughly, I mean, is there anyone out there that is viable for Spurs to get at the moment? I mean, we've alluded to the fact about Janssen, didn't make the bench on Saturday. Is there anyone out there at the moment? Look at someone like Berahino. Is it worth revisiting him again? What do you think?
I think probably that bridge has sailed. I think as well, if you seriously, he's hardly kicked a ball for 2 years, has he? And I think if you bring him in even this month, I think it will take him a long time to get up to match fitness again, and by then you're into late March, early April, and maybe at that stage Pochettino would think, if we've got to wait until April to see any benefit from him, I'd sooner leave it now until May, and then we'll revisit the whole thing next summer. And I also think Jeremy Peace would be so stubborn that he'd still want 25 million for a bloke if we tried to buy him now. Because just a principle. I think the other thing with the January window and adding players, in the past, I think with previous managers, you could have almost said to her, if, say, Harry Redknapp was looking under the Redknapp era or the AVB era, they were looking for a poacher. And you'd have said, well, we can't get one, but we can get a bloke that will maybe score 10 goals. They'd have still taken that. Whereas Pochettino, I think, has such a blueprint for his type of player that you could throw all sorts of strikers at him and he'd still say no, because at the end of the day, I want somebody who's going to do this and he's going to do that. And I'm not just thinking about the next 2 months for Tottenham. I'm thinking about the next 3 seasons for Tottenham. And so I just don't see us making a panic buy or just taking somebody for the sake of taking someone. I think Pochettino is quite principled and rigid like that. He just won't go away from that. So, you know, the amount of targets that are genuinely available get reduced even more because there's the boy Jesse, I think, at Paris, PSG, the old Real Madrid player, I think Guillaume Balaguer was saying, he's definitely available for loan. And you think, right, there's a decent type of player. But I bet if you said to Pochettino, do you want him? No, he can't do this and he can't do that. Therefore, I'm not prepared to take the gamble.
And I think, like you say, you make a point there. I mean, Pochettino has said in the past that he's not prepared to bring anyone in that doesn't feel enhances the squad. And you can't blame him. You know, we've got players at the moment that all want to play. So he's not going to bring anyone else in that he feels is not on the same level and, you know, can't compete. So, again, it's going to be a case where I do think this window will kind of come and go. The squad at the moment is proving itself to be competitive enough to get the results, and with the likes of like an injury to Jan, you've got the likes of Wimmer to step in or Davies to step in, and you would argue that bringing any further players in at this stage, it may hinder the progress of other players as well, because these guys have got to get opportunities somehow. But we'll wait and see. We'll come to you next, Ian. We've got, speaking about Ben Davies and Kevin Wimmer, we've got a question here from Dagar Larasen at Dagar Larasen, who asked, who is a better replacement for Vertonghen in the back three, Ben Davies or Kevin Wimmer?
Well, I think we saw what Kevin Wimmer could do last season when, you know, almost to the day last season, you know, poor old Jan picked up his injury at Selhurst Park. As Jason said earlier, Kevin didn't even put, you know, Wimmer didn't even put a foot wrong. You know, you look at it on Saturday, he brought Davies back on, and I think, you know, Davies has worked at centre back and has got that option to play out as a full back should we need him. It's a lovely dilemma to have. Out of the two, if you wanted me to pick one, I'd probably go for Wimmer, just purely from the fact that if we're up against a strong, you know, competitive side, then that's who we need. But if we're out against someone that is, you know, who's a little bit more artful, then you go with Davies. It's just that lovely sort of blend of positions that we can bring in.
Fair enough. I mean, I say Wimmer, like as we saw last season, the way he came into the Spurs side next to Toby Alderweireld, I mean, many would argue that he's very much the understudy of Jan Vertonghen, and therefore it would just seem to be the correct replacement as such, bringing Wimmer in. I mean, this guy's been waiting for an opportunity. Many would argue that this guy could go away to any other top 6 club, outside the top 6 in the Premier League, and go and be a regular. So why not? The guy needs games, he's chomping at the bit. I'm sure, like I say, given the opportunity, he won't let us down. The next question of the night is going to be to you, Jace. The question is from Mark_6'6", who asks, do you think the 3-4-3 formation would have helped our Champions League run on the larger pitch and may have helped at Wembley? What do you think?
Well, I think one of the big problems we had at Wembley was trying to play our pressing game, and that was the biggest problem I thought that we had, and the biggest impact to the bigger pitch. It may well have done. I think perhaps teams in Europe are more comfortable playing against teams that only have 3 at the back. I think, you know, so for so many years, British football has been played basically with 4 defenders in all, you know, probably 18 teams out of the league have always played that way. So I think we're more used to facing 4 at the back, and therefore suddenly 3 with 2 wing backs is much more of a surprise on us than it is for the European side. So I'm not so sure that alone would have made a difference. I think the fact of having, as I say, being able to press properly at Wembley, of having a genuinely fit side with Toby available, with Kane available, playing our best side and things like that. I think there was a number of reasons why Wembley didn't work, and I think it's unfair to say 3-4-3, just that one change would have made that big a difference.
And just a kind of quick fire question, lads. We'll come to you first, Jace. We've got Dave Ellis at fullback03 who says Spurs have conceded 5 league goals from open play this season. City conceded 5 from open play against Everton. Do we struggle from set pieces? Quick fire?
A little bit. But there's always going to be an area where you struggle from, isn't there? You know, I don't think you're ever going to go through a season and only let in 10 goals. So there's always going to be one area. It's surprising that we are like that because we got such a big, strong side. Because Kane can come back, Wanyama can come back, Dyer, Vertonghen, Toby. So we shouldn't struggle as much as perhaps we have done. But I don't see it being a massive problem at the moment.
And then finally, and we'll come to you, last question of the night. This is from Leon at King Wanyama. Do we master this formation, this 3-5-2, better than Chelsea? And also, he asks, what is the key to beating Man City?
You know, do we master this formation better than Chelsea? If we go on a 14-game unbeaten or winning run, then, you know, using this system, then the answer is yes. I think that the early signs are that it's working well for us against those teams where we feel it will. When it comes to what's the key to beating City, I think that we've said before, you know, we often seem to play better against those teams who are a bit more open. Now, City will go to the game on Saturday expecting to win at the Etihad, you know, and they will play their game against us. I'm looking at the battles. The only person that always concerns me in the City squad, there's 2 really, is Silva and Aguero. And I think if you can nullify them, you know, and I think we've got enough wherewithal within the side to be better than them in all the other 1v1 battles, then that's the way you get one over on them.
Well, that brings on nicely to the City preview. Jace, coming to you. Ian's mentioned it there. I mean, you look at the individual player battles, you know, we're going to come up against a City side with an ageing Yaya Toure, an ageing Zabaleta. Are Spurs the physically fitter side? Have we got the ability to do them on the counter-attack as much?
I don't think it'll be a counter-attack game for us. I think we'll dominate more of the game than City will.
Ian, is a good result only a win? Is a point up there doesn't really do us much, does it? In terms of if we're, I mean, in view of maybe the top 4, if we're looking to aspire for a Champions League place, you would argue maybe a draw up there is good. But if we want any chance of this title, we have to be going there for the win, don't we?
I just think that as a supporter, you know, having, you know, been up there for some pretty good games and some pretty horrendous games in the last few years, you know, my expectation is that we go up there and we get the 3 points. However, the old Spurs supporter within me would turn around and say, I wouldn't be too disappointed in a draw, because ultimately it's taking 2 points off a team that, you know, we all believe is going to be a rival. So I wouldn't be too disappointed with a point. But of course, the person that always goes on about mathematics, you know, would want us to take all 3.
In terms of the lineup, Jace, is it a case of whatever's not broke, don't try and change it? You know, is there any reason why we should be looking to change the 11? I mean, again, we've got a case where we haven't got a game midweek, so everyone is going to get a full week's fitness under their belt. Any reason to change the team? Obviously, apart from Vertonghen, who is naturally looking like he's going to be out, so you would probably say Wimmer's going to come in. Apart from that change there, anyone else at all for you?
No, not at all. I think that's the tried and tested formula at the moment, and it's working. As I said, we've not just won games lately, we've convincingly won them. We've dominated them, we've scored goals, we've looked secure. There's no reason to change it at all, with the exception of Jan's one. I think we do have to go there and win. I think to call yourself a title contender, we're not talking necessarily about winning the league or title winning, we're talking about to be in contention. I don't think we can let that gap get too much bigger. It's 12 months this week that we went 7 points behind Leicester, and we never got to within closer than 2 points of them. And I can't see Chelsea dropping points in just the same way that Leicester didn't drop points. I think Chelsea this weekend they're at home to Hull. So, you know, you would expect Chelsea to win that game. Therefore, if we drop another 2 points, you know, suddenly we're 9 points behind Chelsea. That's a hell of a lot of ground that Chelsea have got to drop points to lose out on. And whilst City are a rival, I can't see City winning the league. So they're a top 4 rival, and I think if you're looking at a result to stay within the race of a top 4, then even a defeat there isn't a disaster. But I think if you're genuinely saying, can Spurs go on and challenge the title, I think you've got to go there and win, because don't forget we've also got Liverpool on the horizon. And I think you have to. I think in that little mini 6-team league, if you like, Liverpool have gone to Arsenal and won, and they've gone to where else they won at Chelsea, didn't they? Yep. Chelsea have gone to Man City and won. Manchester City have gone to Manchester United and won. So we need to get at least one of those big away statements. We've gone to Chelsea and lost. We've gone to Man United and lost. And therefore, I think it is time to say, right, we've got to go to one of these big clubs and win. And for me, I'd actually prefer it to be at Anfield, but I think that the way the league is at the moment, we can't be surrendering another 2 points at the weekend to Chelsea. Not if we're going to be in the title race.
Well, what are we in, Jay? I mean, let's be honest. Just really analysing it quickly, what are we in? Are we in a title race, or are we in a top 4 race? What would you say? Because at the moment, we are 7 points off top.
For me personally, we're definitely in a top 4 race at the moment. Well, obviously we're we're second in the top 4 race. In terms of the title race, we're only in it once Chelsea start to slip up. Because, as I say, 7 points is a big gap. We ourselves don't have Chelsea to play, so we can have. There's no way we have a direct influence on cutting Chelsea's gap. We need them to drop points, and we need Liverpool to beat them when they go to Anfield, for instance, and we need Arsenal or something to get something from Stamford Bridge. So I think we're relying on other clubs to bring us back honestly into a title race. I know I've talked about title races on social media, but it's more the frustration that Manchester United and Manchester City are called in a title race when I think they're too far back to be called in a title race. So for me, we're right on the periphery of a title challenge, but we need one or two things beyond our control to go our way to really get in there.
Ian, what do you think? Same question to you. What do you reckon, we're in top 4, or are we in this title race as well?
My heart says we're in the title race, but my head says we're in the top 4 race. So, again, we're still in it while we're still in it. But I think, we've got to rely on, Chelsea to slip up, have a mini blip to bring us back into a more realistic title race. But, I will still believe until it's can't be achieved.
If I had to pin you down, lads, for predictions, can you give one, Jace? What do you think?
I honestly believe we'll go there and I certainly think we'll go there, have control of the game, and I honestly believe we'll go there and win. But City, let's be fair, City on the back of that defeat yesterday of a horrendous defeat for them, they'll be smarting from that, and they must be hurt from that. And I mean, if I go back to a couple of games they've played recently, I thought Arsenal would go there and win, because Arsenal looked to be in pretty good form there, and Manchester City turned that one around. And they did actually play pretty well at home to Chelsea for the first hour and miss a load of chances before they eventually lost to Chelsea. So it's difficult, isn't it? Because they have got real quality, and that De Bruyne, Aguero can do something from nowhere, and suddenly you're on the back foot. But I honestly believe we'll go there. I think, as I say, we'll dominate the game. It will come down to who takes their chances, and I just fancy Hugo. Perhaps I don't fancy us to take more chances. I perhaps fancy Hugo to make more saves than Claudio Bravo down at the other end. It's
going to be a very... I don't see any reason why we're going to go there with any fear, because you look at City at the weekend, they're in such disarray defensively, and I'm putting a Spurs curse on here, we just look so organised at the moment, and we just go to teams now without this fear of getting beaten. I think it's something ridiculous where we've only lost 4 of our last 29 away games. It is such a ridiculous away record where why should we fear anyone? Ian, if I had to pin you down for a prediction, what do you think?
The same scoreline as it was last season. I think we'll go there and we'll get a 2-1.
And that would pretty much really start causing issues in the Man City camp with Pep Guardiola. There's been a lot of talk recently over his insistence of playing a certain style of football with these players. I mean, me personally, I don't think Spurs are going to get beat. I don't think Spurs will get beat. I don't think we may necessarily win. It is going to be a very, very tough game, and there's no doubt that there will be some kind of backlash from Man City. Whether it will be enough to be sustained for 90 minutes, that remains to be seen. But again, with Spurs, you never know. There is no reason why we should go to Man City in any fear there. So let's hope, fingers crossed, we're talking to you guys next week on the back of another 3 points. Guys, all that remains for me to say is, Jace, thank you for your time again.
No problem, mate. No problem at all.
And Ian, again, thanks for your time this week.
You are very much welcome, Rick.
All that remains to be said is hopefully next week we'll be talking on the back of another fantastic win at the Etihad and another 3 points. And as always, come on you Spurs!
Tottenham, Tottenham, no one can stop